Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the new generation took over the WWF. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Bartlett, tonight I'm going to put a lean on your tattoos.
Yeah, you're not going to get much. Joe Gimateo.
Why don't the two of you get together and really get it on?
Yeah. I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on May 15th, 1995. This Raw was recorded at the Broome County Arena in Binghamton, New York, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I am ready.
Oh, yes.
All right, then let's get into it. So we're going to have promos as our intro here. Some build-up for a match later on tonight. First up is IRS. IRS doesn't seem to be able to look straight at the camera as he cuts a promo. I wasn't sure if this was just some artistic license or what, but he's claiming he'll put a lien on Bam Bam Bigelow's tattoos. Then we switch it over to Bam Bam. Bam Bam takes his turn now. He's happy to beat up the tax man and will be able to do so because he is the beast from the East. Welcome, everyone. It's the day after the WWF had been in your house, and we've got Vince and Lawler live here. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but they stay live throughout, right? We don't end up with a green screen segment.
I didn't see any green screen section, yeah.
Definitely live.
I have to say, it reminded me the most of a modern day audience. It just seemed it had that vibe and size of audience, and Vince was wearing the Attitude Era suit at this point. Just everything about the way they looked really reminded me of what we're about to enter, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of the things that we're about to enter, look at the kisser on the King. He's happy because he actually beat Bret Hart, quote unquote, beat.
Well, and speaking of that, too, we're getting a regular Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, hopefully that continues as a more regular thing now that he's kind of more or less, well, I don't know. I guess he's out of his feud with Bret Hart, right? I mean, there can't be too much left to it now.
Yeah, he gloated about the win a little bit, but he didn't really launch too many more attacks towards him, so I think it's over.
Yeah, there weren't any racial slurs or accusations of Canadian racism.
Well, you're going to wish it's over here in a few weeks.
Always the bringer of joy, Joseph. Thank you.
You're going to wish it had ended today.
I'm pretty sure that we've said that at least a dozen times about some of the shit that's been going on here. Is Diesel still the champion, by the way? Yeah, that should have ended quite a while ago. Well, after the King gloats some more about his match and his victory, Vince informs us that there will be a special announcement from Bob Backlund, as well as a King of the Ring qualifier match, The Speedster, Bob Holly versus Mantar. But now, we're going to go into our first match of the night. Owen Hart and Yokozuna, with Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji, defeat Nick Barbary and Bill Weaver by pinfall in 3 minutes. Yokozuna continues to overflow, and Owen Hart continues to bring his smart-ass vibe with him to the ring. Owen's looking very chipper these last few matches we've seen him in. I think he's genuinely enjoying being a tag team champion with somebody who, by all reports was a really good guy, despite his fatness. So they must be having a lot of fun together. During the beginning of the match here, Yoko's in. Yoko sticks to a 5-foot radius in the middle of the ring. I was getting like flashbacks of Adam Bomb, afterburn in my eyes from the Bomb Squad, if you will. He starts to tie up and then ends this sequence with a double clothesline on both of the jobbers here. He doesn't walk around at all. He stays in the middle of the ring getting all of this done to minimize his motion, and yet he is still breathing heavily. I think they've really figured out the correct formula for Yoko here, briefly doing power moves, then tagging out, allowing Owen to enter the ring and perform the flashy, athletic, technical stuff. We talked about this quite a bit in our In Your House episode there last week, but it seems like that formula is continuing. Bill Weaver looks like a porn star that stumbled into the wrestling business, while Nick Barbary comes across as a jock from a late 80s teen movie. In the end, Yoko gets tagged in for the finish, which is an impressive sidewalk slam into the pin and a 3 counts. Joe, please, what did you think of this week's opener?
Well, right away, I think that there's just a lot of people that come down to the ring when Yokozuna and Owen Hart have a match. This was kind of the first time I really noticed it as being kind of distracting a little bit. With Fuji and Jim Cornette, I'm just kind of thinking, like, maybe do they need both of them? I don't know. A typical match from these guys. Yokozuna starts it with a couple moves. Then Owen comes in for about double that amount of time. And then Yoko comes in, does 1 or 2 more moves, and it's over. You know, it's the typical thing that's happening now with these two. And I don't think they can have a match longer than, 7-8 minutes, even on a pay-per-view with the Smoking Guns. So yeah, just typical. Nothing too exciting here. I don't think Yokozuna did the Vulcan nerve pinch, did he? In this one?
No, he did not.
I don't think so.
So, and I don't think we've seen him do a bonsai drop since they've been a tag team. I guess it only comes out on special occasions.
I thought that this match was kind of a continuation from In Your House, where, like you already mentioned, Bartlett, they seem to be figuring out the formula that works with Owen and Yoko. You know, Yoko is not going to give us a fantastic match where he stays in there for any length of time, but I think they are starting to use his power moves in at least decent fashion. You know, the Yoko ducking the clothesline from the double team from the 2 jobbers and then laying out his own clothesline, you know, just things like that, setting him up as this monster, and him actually performing it without completely having a heart attack in the middle of the ring is better than it was a couple months ago. That, you know, it's at least that. Joe, you were saying the big entourage of people that come down with him. It is getting a bit crowded, but I have to say, I love Cornette, what he said to that scrawny kid in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see what happens when a fetus doesn't get enough oxygen, huh? Brutal, Cornette, brutal. It's a little bit busy, but if he could keep on throwing out stuff like that, he could come down as long as he wants. Back to the match, though. A very short jobber match, you know. I will say, complete agreement, a very nice looking sidewalk slam that Yoko ended this match with. And then I also loved the way he just continued to humiliate Bill Weaver, how he just laid on top of him under his massive girth for like a good minute after the match. And then when he got off, he actually rolled the whole way down Weaver's body and off his legs. Yeah. I mean, I thought that was pretty great. I mean, this was nothing fantastic, but it was a fairly short jobber match that I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Ryan. I like the fact that we are hopefully going to regularly get some action with Owen Hart here. And Joe, getting back to something that you said, one of the big problems that I had with Yokozuna was the Vulcan nerve pinch. Getting in something like that and then sitting in it because he's too goddamn fat to do anything else and has to stop and catch his breath. This is what I mean by the formula with Yoko here. I love the fact that we don't have to put up with that anymore because he just tags out. He can go catch his breather on the ropes while Owen carries some time, and it's good all around. This has me a lot more up on Yoko than I've been in the past, so I hope it's an upward trend. I hope it continues. Moving along to our next segment, Last night at In Your House. You're going to hear that a few times in this episode. There's going to be some still shots from the In Your House pay-per-view, highlighting the various phases of the angle leading up to the match, during the match, and the final results. Thanks to Hakushi, Shinja, and the official's foot being caught in the rope, Lawler got the win. Jim Ross got an interview with the Hitman after all of this, and that is available on the call-in line, 1-900-SHAMELESS. We'll take a commercial break. This is going to be a repeat of the commercial that ended In Your House, the WWF being the last great savior of humankind. But wait, what's that? Do you guys hear the crackling sound of a guitar amp being cranked up to lame? Well, if you do, that just means that we're going to head into our next match. Man Mountain Rock, that's MMR, defeats Iron Mike Sharp by submission in 1 minute and 30 seconds. And Iron Mike Sharp is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Jason. Mike Sharp is this week's jobber. Mike Sharp was born Michael Sharp on October 28th, 1951 in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Over his career, he only used the names Iron Mike Sharp or plain old Mike Sharp. Sharp came from a famous family of wrestlers, most famous his father and uncle, who were a very successful tag team back in the 1950s. At the age of 25, Mike decided to follow in his father's footsteps and began training with Dewey Robertson, making his debut in 1973. Sharp's impressive physique and stature, billed at 6'4", 282 pounds, allowed him to quickly make his mark in the Canadian territories, becoming a 2-time NWA Canada Tag Team Champ, as well as winning the Pacific Coast Heavyweight title. In the late 1970s, his career picked up even more steam after moving to Louisiana, where he quickly became a fan favorite, winning the Mid-South Wrestling Championship, the Louisiana Championship belt twice, and the Mississippi title also twice, along with winning the Brass Knucks tournament in 1979.
Oh.
In January 1983, Mike Sharp began his WWF career. Sadly, like so many other smaller promotion champions in the past, Sharp would spend his time at the WWF predominantly as a jobber. His biggest push came when he first joined the company. He was managed by Captain Lou Albano and regularly defeated jobbers after smashing them with his forearm, but was more distinguished by his near constant yelling and grunting through his matches. However, his push would end on April 30th, 1983, after a loss to heavyweight champion Bob Backlund in a title match. In 1984, Sharp and Hulk Hogan teamed together during a WWF tour of Japan, wrestling against stars of New Japan Wrestling. Hogan, at the time, was wrestling as a heel in Japan. Sharp would never again see heights like this in the WWF. His remaining years, he would spend jobbing out to just about every superstar that went through the Federation in the 80s and 90s. His last WWF and televised match was on June 6, 1995, losing to the tag team The Smoking Guns. After leaving the WWF, Sharp had only a handful of matches in small independent promotions throughout 96 and 97, retiring on March 22, 1997 after a loss to Bodyguard for Hire. After his retirement, Sharp ran a wrestling school in Brick, New Jersey for just under a decade. I don't know if our listeners out there remember, but there has been quite a few Jobber of the Weeks that we've covered here on Wrasslin Raw that have come from Mike Sharp's wrestling school. So way to go training those jobbers, Mike. In 2007, Mike returned to Hamilton, Canada to live with his aging mother. That summer, while doing a landscaping job, he suffered a deep cut in his leg, which became infected. He became confined to a wheelchair and ended up living in a basement apartment where he became a recluse.
Jesus Christ.
It's not a happy story. After that, other health problems developed along the way, and on January 17th, 2016, Mike Sharp died at the age of 64.
God damn. I have to say that's up there as far as like tragic twist endings to jobbers goes.
We've had some zingers, and that one's up there.
I agree with that, but basically, if not for Mike Sharp, there would be no Jobber of the Week segment.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Let's see.
He trained all of them.
He officially entered jobber status in his loss to Backlund in 83, you said, right?
Yeah, that was his last major push, yeah.
So 12 straight years as a jobber with the WWF. That's pretty good.
But training the others, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And to end as a wheelchair-bound recluse in a basement.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, really. Well, thank you for that. That's good stuff. I was very happy to see Iron Mike Sharp in this episode, and very happy to hear you doing the Jobber of the Week segment on him. We've seen him quite a bit here in Wrasslin Raw over the course of the past 2 years, so good to see him represented.
He deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. What he didn't deserve was this match with MMR. At the beginning, the lights go down, and the music starts to play. Vince roars, "Go, get 'em, Rock!" MMR has a WWF-themed guitar, as in the body of the guitar is that classic chrome-colored WWF symbol. It's both beautiful and hideous at the same time. I have to note here, the camera did a great job of panning in and out and zooming around. I was unable to watch what MMR was doing closely enough. It was the kind of guitar solo that kind of sounds impressive until you realize that it's more or less just some repeating lines with just enough distortion to make them sound edgy, but also inoffensive. So, I have to turn to our resident professional musician, Joe. Was MMR actually playing the noise that we were hearing?
Like I've said before, I don't think he's actually playing live, but it's probably him playing a recording and then he's just miming to the recording.
Gotcha.
Would be my guess.
A Milli Vanilli type situation.
No. Milli
Well,
Vanilli.
no, yeah, because they didn't sing at all.
Yeah,
right?
there were other
right.
people singing that.
That's
more
right,
of
my
a
bad.
Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Super Bowl halftime show type of thing.
Gotcha.
Or Ashley Simpson, Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Thank you for that reference. Well, we'll cut to commercial, and when we come back, the match is cranked up and ready to begin. From behind, MMR looks like a large woman in a muumuu. He was better off wearing the tie-dye because this outfit, with the fresh hair dye job, makes him look like the bearded lady at the freak show. I greatly prefer Iron Mike Sharp's look. He's in plain black trunks. He's got somewhat of a hunchback. There's almost no action from MMR in this match. It's virtually all Iron Mike Sharp until the very end when MMR unleashes his devastating armbar on the mat to secure the submission. Ryan, please, what did you think of Mrs. Mountain Rock here?
I think this is only the second time we've seen Man Mountain Rock wrestle here on Raw, and it's too many times. He is not very good, and like you said, Iron Mike Sharp was really the star here. It looks like at this point in his career, he maybe took a little too many steroids, and a Manzier could maybe help him out a little bit.
Oh.
But outside of that, I thought he did a really good job is selling that like big, strong guy trying to push over this useless Man Mountain Rock. And really, Mike Sharp does all of the work except for the very end. You said exactly what happened here. I can't help but just feel bad for Mike Sharp here. You know, he had the job out to someone who he's a terrible wrestler and the gimmick is just terrible. I feel bad for Mike Sharp.
Yeah, this gimmick might be the worst we've seen. I mean, it's up there with Mantar.
Well, yeah, we get to see that tonight too.
Yeah, this is a gimmick fest here tonight. Bartlett, you mentioned, it was funny you mentioned that MMR kind of looks like he belongs in some kind of a freak show. I actually had noted here that Mike Sharp kind of reminds me of like a circus wrestler with all the yelling and grunting that he's doing. And he kind of has like that old school style, like with the, you'd watch like old black and white videos that are like moving in fast motion. It's kind of what Mike Sharp makes me think of. But MMR is just sloppy as fuck. And I mean, in both his body and his wrestling. And that guitar intro was 3 times longer than the match.
Oh, wow. You're right.
I'll say I love that guitar.
Yeah, I just hope they didn't spend a whole lot of money on it for that,
Both beautiful and hideous at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really funny because I didn't mention it in my notes here whenever I was writing everything down, but whenever you mentioned in your Jobber of the Week segment there, Ryan, and then Joe, you just mentioned it too, his yelling and grunting and quite entertaining. Not quite to Rip Rogers level, but still very, very, very entertaining for a jobber. I was, again, happy to see Iron Mike Sharp in this match. Well, we're going to move it to the next segment, Last Night at In Your House. Since it isn't wrestling, we can actually have video footage of this instead of still shots because nobody's going to fork out any money for this. Todd Pettingzoo and Stephanie Wyand giving away a house, complete with the misdial, and all the way up through the end, Vince tells us that only in America and only in the World Wrestling Federation can you win a house in Florida. Just
next to Sid.
Very weird qualifier there at the end. He should have just left it at win a house, but win a house in Florida. The winner is a 6th grader whose favorite wrestler happens to be Shawn Michaels. And, oh-ho, Shawn Michaels will be back next week to take on King Kong Bundy. Now that it's back to talking about wrestling, Vince and the King describe the events of the Razor Ramon, Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Roadie handicap match through still shots. This includes scenes of the aftermath involving Aldo Montoya and Savio Vega. Savio is standing by as we speak, and backstage, Savio launches into a Spanish language tirade. I don't speak Spanish. I have no idea what he was saying. Vince cuts him off. Savio tries for English this time. It still really just doesn't work out very well. Vince segues away from him whenever Savio reverts back to Spanish. Vince then reminds us about Bam Bam and IRS later on, before cutting to commercial. Just briefly, guys, Joe first. What did you think of Savio Vega's promo here?
I think the promo with Savio, it's, he's all wound up about something, but we don't know what. I think it was somewhat entertaining. He's a new guy. He's speaking Spanish and English, and he's all wound up, but why? I guess we just need to know why, and I'm cool with it.
I'm in agreement here. We couldn't understand most of it, but he was really giving off a lot of energy in this promo. It worked for me. I thought it was pretty entertaining. But one thing I did have to note is I couldn't help but notice all of the blade marks on his forehead.
Oh,
This guy must have cut 1,000,000 times. He had to be in some real gore fests.
Yeah, I saw that too. It's always great whenever that stands out because, how else do you really explain that? You know?
Just blade marks all over the forehead.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys here. The blade marks just kind of ruined it a little bit for me. I'm not saying that it ruined it for you, Ryan, but they stood out to me, and it kind of breached my suspension of disbelief. But at the same time, yeah, man, he was worked up about something. His buddy, Razor Ramon, in the spirit of friendship. Isn't amigo friend in Spanish?
Sure.
Yeah, well, the theme of friendship is multicultural and multilingual. We'll return from commercial to go straight into our next match. Bob Holly defeats Mantar with Jim Cornette by pinfall in a King of the Ring qualifying match in 5 minutes and 27 seconds. Hold the phones, stop the match, it's Barry fucking Dudensky. He's got another shirt for us here, everybody. Diesel versus Sid. Blow the roof off the house is the graphic. and this looks like it could have been like a poster for something off of Nickelodeon Saturday mornings. It comes in sizes small through XX, and also, hey, look at this Bret Hart all over shirt. Gotta just throw that one in there real quick.
That Bret Hart all over shirt's looking like $1 million now next to this shirt.
Yeah, who the fuck would want that shirt?
It looked like one of those, you know, back in the 90s, like if you went to one of those cheap beach shops, like in Rehoboth Beach, and you'd get that screen print shirt. That's what that shirt looked like. It was really low quality.
And who would want to relive that match?
Yeah. How do you follow up a cheap in your house other than with a cheap t-shirt, right?
Charge more for the shirt than the show.
Well, Mabel's squash of Adam Bomb last night at In Your House put Mabel on the board in the first bracket of the King of the Ring tournament, and this match is going to determine the next name to hit the board. I really, really hate Bob Holly's music now. I almost prefer Mantar's stampede and mooing sounds. Almost, I said. It's a pretty close call because I tell you what, that Bob Holly music, it's like they were trying to knock off a Excite Bike or something, some kind of
pretty bad
8-bit racing game. Mantar gives us a moo to start things off with, as well as a pretty solid toss of Bob Holly getting some decent air and distance. I had to note, the fans seem to really be enjoying the mooing. I was kind of enjoying it a little bit myself. I don't know if I'm just grasping at straws or what, but during the match, there are some stutter steps. It seems like there's a slight lack of communication throughout the majority of the match. Bob Holly is doing a fantastic job of selling all of Mantar's power moves. And again, I had to note, for the most part, the fans are sitting down for this one, and I can't blame them, only getting on their feet for a couple false finishes when Bob Holly rolls up Mantar. Finally, after the requisite 3 attempts at a clothesline, an extra missile dropkick, and then a crossbody from the top rope, Bob Holly gets the pin and the 3 count, as well as that slot in the King of the Ring tournament. Ryan, get us going on this, please.
Before the match even got going, we see Mantar, and we've seen this before, him doing this motion with his arms. That
I have that. Yeah, I have that written down as my first thing here. What is that? What is he doing?
Yeah, I guess he's supposed to be looking like a charging bull, but to me, it just looks like he's trying to cross country ski or something. The hand motion just makes no sense. He needs to stop it. But yeah, like you said, when it first started and Mantar started tossing Bob Holly around, you know, showing off his power, it actually looked pretty decent. There was a point in the match where I actually thought, you know, hey, Mantar maybe isn't all that bad, but my idea changed once Bob Holly took over the offensive. He does a terrible job at selling, you know. He's okay at dishing out moves, but he just doesn't know how to sell a move very well at all. I did get a good laugh every time Vince has to push Bob Holly's on the track experience. I just like what he said, Bob Holly doesn't give up in either the ring or the track. Just give it up, Vince. Yeah. Give it up. He's not a racer. It ended with Bob Holly giving a couple nice-looking, high-flying maneuvers, and I have to say, I was happy with this match. If for nothing else, I was glad to see Holly move into the next round of this King of the Ring. I think he deserves it. He's the better wrestler out of the two. Even though he was the underdog, I was happy to see him get this win.
You know, I think MMR actually wrote Bob Holly's entrance music. You know, I wouldn't mind owning one of those WWF leather jackets that Bob Holly wears into the ring. I kind of like those. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
It comes with a balding mullet. Are you willing to wear that too?
Well, I'm already balding. I just got to grow the mullet.
This is the first non-jobber we've seen Mantar face. You know, I agree with Ryan basically on this whole thing. He started off okay, showing off the power. We got the kids mooing in the crowd. but his selling abilities are not good, and it's probably because he hasn't really had to do it. I mean, we've only seen him squash a bunch of jobbers, so... I am glad, Bob Hawley is not really a superstar at the moment, but he was getting a little bit of a push there in the tag team division, so I'm glad that he did not get buried here by Mantar, because that would not have been good.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you guys have said here. I found it very interesting that people were up on the mooing, and I found it even more interesting that I'm getting up on the mooing. Again, it might just be a mark of my desperation to enjoy something. No, not up, but just a little bit. Just a up.
Fully torqued.
Part of my problem with Mantar isn't necessarily the mooing. The gimmick is shitty, but we've got tons of shitty gimmicks here, so I can't really hang my opinion on that as much as I might want to. But if he could just... He's good with the power moves. If he could just... do something other than moo. I mean, I'll take the moos. I'll take what I can get out of this at this point, but really, Mantar should be taking lessons from Iron Mike Sharp on vocalizations during power moves, because just imagine how much more impressive Mantar might be with all of the ahs and the grunts and all of the stuff that Iron Mike Sharp does.
Or save those loud moves for the middle of a move, like while you're slamming a guy, let out a moo, not just moo around the ring when you're not doing anything.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I also agree with you guys about Bob Hawley. If I understand the bracket system correctly, he entered into the very next open bracket, which puts him facing Mabel in the bracket system. Am I getting that right, do you think?
Well, it's either that or he is all the way down at the bottom of the bracket and just filled that first match. You know what I mean? It's one of the two.
Okay. Either way, we're not going to dwell too much on his status in King of the Ring. We'll get there eventually, but we'll move it along here. Hey, here comes Shawn Michaels. And so this is a Shawn Michaels promo, video package. This whole promo had a background score of, I kid you not, cartoon music. Cartoon fucking music for one of the hottest heels in the WWF, who they are turning into a babyface and who's best friends with Diesel. Pretty soon there's going to be a goddamn Rocky and Bullwinkle music whenever they start coming out together.
Best friends with Diesel, but half of these shots are feuds with Diesel.
Yes. The one that made me kind of arch my eyebrows was the one of Shawn Michaels punching the cardboard cutout of Diesel during the Heartbreak Hotel. Shawn Michaels, he's cocky, he's charismatic, he's the Heartbreak Kid. But as we all know, Ted DiBiase was behind it all along, and so that means King Kong Bundy is going to be on our TV screens. We get a truly disgusting view of Bundy roaring or belching or both, then the side-by-side view of Shawn Michaels smooching at the camera on one side and Bundy clicking his jaw while waddling on the other side. Next week on Monday Night Raw, Shawn Michaels versus King Kong Bundy. Real quick, guys, just briefly, Joe first. What are your predictions for the quality of that match?
Well, I think we should just skip next week's Raw and go into the following week. Those are my thoughts.
When I heard Shawn Michaels was coming back, he is one of the all-time greats, so I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
And then immediately murdered my enthusiasm by telling me he's facing off King Kong Bundy. What a way to waste a return.
Yeah. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, you're right, but my brain didn't even go there. My first thought was, what the hell does that meeting of styles, if you can even call Bundy's shit a style, what does that meeting of styles end up looking like? Because, Shawn Michaels is 110% balls to the wall. We are going to have a good match and do a great show here. Meanwhile, Bundy is, pay me.
Yeah, it can't end well.
Yeah.
Styles clash. Yeah.
I'm kind of with you guys. I do not have high hopes for it. But that being said, if it's possible at all to get a good match out of who the fuck am I kidding? What am I even saying?
Undertaker couldn't do it.
I was going to say, if anybody could have gotten the
it.
good match out of King Kong Bundy, it would have been Undertaker. And instead, we got the worst Undertaker match of all time.
Well, arguably, him and Giant Gonzalez.
No, it's official. We've had the plaque. The plaque has been made.
You know what? I'm adding that to the Christmas list, boys. We're gonna get plaques, a framed picture of them two in that match, a little thing underneath it that says "Worst Undertaker match of all time
ever."
Moving along, the next segment. After a quick commercial break, it's time for Mr. Bob Backlund's big announcement. This has been in the works for weeks now, apparently. Okay. It's basically gibberish. He refers to seeing the light after that I Quit match with Bret Hart and just does his best to butcher the English language, and it's typical. It's really, that's the best way to describe it. This is a typical, albeit longer, example of what Backlund has been doing lately. Backlund makes a ton of really shitty historical references. Some correct, some completely made up. I don't even know where to begin with them. If anybody wants to know what I'm talking about, go back and look it up. But I'm pretty sure at one point he said that JFK was assassinated in 1983. Backlund gets choked up a couple times. He's, I guess, emotional. Or maybe just has a frog in his throat. We'll never know because he can't emote for shit. He can't get his announcement out. Eventually, we get to the final announcement, which is that Bob Backlund is running for President of the United States of America. Upon this announcement, a really terrible marching band comes out. They're missing so many notes and barely playing their instruments. There's fireworks. It's incredible. I want one of those Backlund for President campaign buttons, by the way. Ryan, what did you think about this announcement?
I've made my thoughts on Bob Backlund clear over our podcast time. I'm not a big fan. This is kind of the typical spiel from Bob Backlund to begin with, where he just kind of throw-ups a bunch of big words and tries to see what's going to stick on the wall. But right when he started flubbing up all of these historical facts, like the first Olympics being in 1776, I'm looking at my watch and I'm really starting to realize that this segment is dragging on way too long. Then he announces it. He's running for president. Bartlett, I remember a while ago you saying this was one of your favorite wrestling memories of all time. Do I have that correct?
Well, of my childhood.
Okay.
Like nostalgia-wise, this is something that I distinctly remember from my childhood, and back then, I fucking loved it.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We need to get Bob Backlund the fuck off television, because anytime he's on there, he just ruins it. The thing I got the biggest kick out of this segment was when they left Bob Backlund and they went to commercial and they came back to the King and Vince sitting at the table. And I love this little scene. Like, the King looked like he was generally ecstatic to get this Bob Backlund for president pin. And he tries to give one to Vince. And then Vince throws out, well, when it comes to politicians, I guess Bob Backlund is qualified. So I like that line. But Bob Backlund, please stop.
I'm glad you finished with that, because I'm going to play off of that a little bit. That's one thing that I really enjoyed was Vince and Jerry Lawler just selling this very well the whole time.
Yeah, it's the best part of it.
Yeah, I thought that was good. I thought it was funny because of that. But at the same time, it's one of those things I'm going to get sick of, and I know it, because wasn't the election in 1996 at the end of the year? So we are in May of 1995. Is this going to go on for another year and a half? I don't know. I also laughed when Vince told him that his shirt was untucked. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, if this is going to go on for a year and a half, then that's going to be, it's not going to work for me, brother.
Yeah, and that's a great way to kind of frame this. This was designed to attempt to coincide with the 1996 election. So year and a half. Yeah,
that was the year of Bob Dole, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yep. Bob Dole can beat Bob Backlund. So as we've already mentioned here, this was one of my just favorite childhood moments. And I feel that Bob Backlund is a great example of one of the things that I generally tell people whenever they ask about what we do here with Wrasslin Raw. We watched this stuff as a kid. We've been wrestling fans for decades at this point. And the great thing about going back and rewatching all of these old episodes of Raw and all of the storylines and just everything is that we get to find out as kids what holds up to our adulthood, Things like Owen Hart and the Smoking Guns manage to survive the jaded, cynical view that we develop as we get older. Meanwhile, my dumb kid ass used to like Bob Backlund. And obviously it's bullshit now. I'm to the point where I would prefer him to not be on TV, but I can't deny the fact that this pressed some serious nostalgia buttons for me. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to dislike it, but I don't think I'm going to dislike it nearly as much as the two of you are. I'll put it that way.
I think that could go without saying. Yeah.
Moving along to the next segment. Last night at In Your House. Still shots of the main event, Diesel versus Psycho Sid. What else is there to say? The match was terrible. If you'd like to hear us talk more about that, it's in last week's Wrasslin Raw release in our archives, In Your House 1. In the meantime, though, Jim Ross was able to get a hold of Ted DiBiase and IRS as they were entering the arena. And we'll cut over to them, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, as they were entering the arena. It totally wasn't staged at all. The bottom line here, once Jim gets a hold of them, is that they are really angling for a tag team match. Sid and Tatanka versus Diesel and Bam Bam. We'll see if it ends up happening or not. DiBiase and IRS end it by shoving their way past the camera. IRS saying, "Out of the way or I'll audit you." Just briefly, Joe, as our resident professional auditor, can you indeed audit people for being in your way?
Sure, why not? You can audit how well they get out of the way and maybe make a recommendation to get out of the way a lot quicker.
I love that.
You could audit just about anything, right?
Yeah, and give them some process improvements.
I did love Ted DiBiase's comment to Jim Ross, though, about his tie and how he liked it even though he's a pauper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we could have had a little more facial expressions from Jim Ross on this. 'Cause I think he could have sold it.
Yeah, we just got the back of his head there, yeah.
We're still in the era of Vince not wanting Jim Ross's chubby, bell-palsied face on TV.
Well, so. and we actually saw the back of his head because it's also pre-cowboy hat. So.
Oh, yeah. Good call there, too. Well, this backstage thing with DiBiase and IRS is going to take us into our final match of the night. Bam Bam Bigelow with Diesel, not at first, but eventually, defeats Erwin R. Shyster, a.k.a. IRS, with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, by pinfall in 5 minutes and 8 seconds. After the $1 Million Corporation is in the ring first, Bam Bam is out next. Bam Bam has new music and new entrance gear. I hate all of it. Hate it. Hate the music. Really hate his entrance gear. Bam Bam lets everyone know that his true purpose here is not to wrestle in a match that furthers his own storyline, but Bam Bam is really here to get Diesel over. As the Gallop of Roseanne fires up, Diesel comes out to chase Ted DiBiase away, leaving IRS all alone with Bam Bam in the ring and Diesel on the outside. We cut to commercial on a ridiculous spot involving Diesel hauling IRS by his suspenders, and we come back to Bam Bam in charge in the ring. The action here is subpar, and literally, as soon as I typed the word subpar, IRS puts Bam Bam into an abdominal stretch. The old chestnut. Of course, once the corner turnbuckle is exposed by IRS and IRS manages to get Bam Bam to hit off of it, IRS uses a boot on the ropes as leverage for the pin. And thank goodness Diesel is there to throw his foot off, disrupting the count. We get to the finish right after, Bam Bam getting a pin and the 3 count, so that Diesel can come in the ring and congratulate him. Vince ignores Bam Bam's victory to gush over Diesel's presence in the ring. But wait, as we cut to commercial, the rest of the $1 Million Corporation are coming down the entryway, Sid included. When we return from commercial, it's as if that never happened. We're informed that the tag team match between Team Roseanne and the $1 Million Corporation's Tatanka and Sid is official for, I think, next week. They didn't quite say it clearly, but I'm pretty sure that tag match is on. Don't forget also the King Kong Bundy versus Shawn Michaels match. And we go into another Shawn Michaels video package. This time it's a highlight reel of Shawn's greatest hits. But before we can end it in what is truly the formula, we can't end. I'm not saying that a Shawn Michaels video package is the best way to end it, but hey, he's a great wrestler and you can put together one hell of a highlight reel of Shawn Michaels spots in the ring. We can't end it with that. We end it with a close-up of King Kong Bundy's sweaty, disgusting mush, saying that Michaels may be back next week, but he won't be back for long, and then laughing into the camera as we fade to black. Joe, please, what did you think of our main event tonight, and also the way that Raw ended?
I agree with you with Bam Bam's new look. His makeover is just awful, and I hate it so much that I just didn't even care about this match, to be honest. The music is horrible. The new ring gear is horrible. The music almost sounds like the same melody as Cocaine by Eric Clapton. Like, that's immediately what I thought of when I heard it. I don't know. This is just a missed opportunity, in my opinion, because Bam Bam can work as a babyface in the ring, but the makeover is not necessary. Putting him with Diesel is not necessary. I feel like it's just a missed opportunity, really. And the match was boring as hell. And 30 seconds into it, IRS is already sweating bullets. And then we get Bundy's sweaty, gross kisser to end the show, which is just that's my low light. My low light is this, the whole thing, everything I just discussed. I know we'll get into that later, but holy shit, this was bad.
I'm kind of in agreement with you guys here. It starts off, we love Bam Bam. I love the way Bam Bam wrestles. But when he came down to the ring and this new flaming collar and shooting arm braces, it was just bizarre. And all I could really think of, do you guys remember Dynamo from The Running Man?
Yes.
That's all I could think of.
Yes.
It reminded me of Dynamo from The Running Man. That's not a good thing. And the match was, once it started, it was kind of standard fare for an IRS match. The moment he got hit, he rolls out of the ring. He pleads to the ref for a while. He, I think, rolls back onto the curtain and back out a couple times to extend the 10 count a little longer. He comes back in, he gets a sleeper hold that he then transitions into his patented abdominal stretch. I mean, we had all of the marks that we typically get in an IRS match. Again, that's not a good thing. I was happy to see Bam Bam finally get a win here, but this match was very boring. As far as the way we ended it, I think we all know we're going to hate it. You said, Bartlett, I would have been fine with a Heartbreak Kid little package here at the end, but instead we have to end it with King Kong Bundy's big fat head.
Yeah, I am with you guys on just about all of this here. Maybe for different reasons, though. Obviously, I hated Bam Bam's music and his look. It's just, Joe, you said it perfectly. He didn't need any of that. None of that needed changed. He needed to just continue being Bam Bam with a different goal in mind. Instead of being DiBiase's lackey, he's going to be the righteous avenger and taking out the $1 million corporation. That would have been more than enough story to get him some serious crowd response. People would have loved that. The thing that pissed me off the most here, though, is that it was clear from the very beginning that this wasn't about Bam Bam or trying to do anything for Bam Bam or getting Bam Bam over or really anything. This was about Diesel. They just took it and made it about Diesel, and it disgusted me. Diesel's already got the fucking belt and more screen time than he can professionally handle. Just give somebody else a chance to be a main event talent and to try to work with the opportunity they're given instead of just kind of, it's almost like a philosophical squash. You know what I mean? Like, they're not even attempting to do anything with Bam Bam. And then once it doesn't work out, they're going to look at it and they're going to say, well, we gave you the frilly fire collars and we gave you new music. You couldn't get yourself over. No. It's because you had him right from the beginning as a fucking lackey for Diesel, practically. I mean, it's not literally that way, but
the way he talked about it, like going into this match, I'm going to have a real man in my corner.
Exactly.
Like DiBiase said, why don't the two of you just get together and really get it on?
But like, Bam Bam is the type of personality where he can just yell at the camera the PG equivalent of, I'm going to come out there and I'm going to just fuck your world up. And that would have gotten over.
Because I'm the beast from the East, and that's all you need.
Exactly. But again, like I said, Bam Bam's babyface push is going to get flushed down the shitter, and they're going to try to blame it on Bam Bam, but it ain't going to be Bam Bam's fault. It's going to be Creative's fault on this one. As far as Bundy goes, I made my fucking thoughts on that clear earlier. We can't end on a high note. Can't do it. Even if they've got to squeak in this disgusting sack of shit in the last 30 seconds, they're going to do it. So, all right, and that's it. That's the end of the episode. We're going to take it over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you go first? You've already kind of let yours slip, so you might as well keep going.
Yeah, I've given my low light, basically everything from Bam Bam coming out to the ring, and after that is my low light. My highlight, sadly, I mean, I had to scratch and claw to find something here. I mean, I'd have to go with, I guess, Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler selling the whole Backlund for president thing. I guess that was my highlight.
Wow. Okay.
My highlight, and I think, Joe, you're going to disagree with this, but I went with the Yoko Owen match versus the Jobbers. I mean, it was nothing flashy or anything, but it was a good jobber tag match, and I think Yoko is finally starting to get, into that right pattern, and he doesn't look like he's going to drop over dead immediately. So that's all pluses. My low light, Bob fucking Backlund and everything he does.
Howdy doody.
Yeah, I'm going to be with Ryan on my highlight. That Yoko match, and you know what? I'm actually with Joe also, because I had to scratch.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
To really think of it. But I ended up going with the Yoko Owen match only because I like the very, very slow, very, very gradual uptick in the quality of Yoko's matches. I'm not saying that this is like high quality shit or anything, but his matches consistently are maintaining a certain level of quality that I never expect from Yokozuna. So there's that. Low light, the treatment of Bam Bam. There are plenty of things in this episode that I could have given as a low light. The MMR match did briefly cross my mind, but yeah, Bam Bam. They are just fucking poor Bam Bam. I can't stand it.
And I have to say, for as many bad spots as there were in this episode, and as hard as it was to scratch for a highlight, it wasn't terrible. I found myself entertained through this 46 minutes. It was very weird. There was a lot of bad spots, but I didn't find myself tortured watching it.
Yeah, agreed. But if only all episodes of Raw could do that. If only that were our minimum standard. If we could set the bar at that, we'd be golden.
Yeah.
Next week isn't looking too promising.
But awesome. I'm glad that we at least don't hate our lives right now, having watched it. Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around May 15th, 1995 for us?
I do. There's a lot of commentary in the Wrestling Observer about this particular episode of Raw. Dave Meltzer loved the Bob Backlund interview. He put it over big time.
No surprise
the
there.
magazine.
That fuck.
Yeah. But he did say that the lowlights of the show were the key matches, like Bob Holly versus Mantar. Mantar is awful, and every time you see him, you think this must be a practical joke on Jim Cornette. But they booked the match well enough to elevate it to half a star. The other key match was Bam Bam over IRS, which was real bad, half a star. So those were Dave Meltzer's thoughts on this particular episode of Raw, which I thought was interesting because he usually doesn't recap a Raw episode like that. Another note here, something worth noting, is the WWF will induct some new people into the WWF Hall of Fame on June 24th, which they used to do in conjunction with the King of the Ring event in 94 and 95. Then it was in conjunction with the 96 Survivor Series. And then it went on hiatus until 2004. They brought it back, and that's when it was in conjunction with WrestleMania and continues to be.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know it went away like that.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, the 1994, we got the Grand Wizard, who actually gave Howdy Doody his name. Antonino Rocca, the Fabulous Moolah, Ivan Putski, George the Animal Steel, Pedro Morales, and Ernie Ladd, all going in.
Huh.
Dave Meltzer had something interesting to say about this. He said that until they induct Bruno Sammartino, whether he's willing or not, it will always come off as more being nice to people who remained nice to them, and a yearly reminder of pettiness rather than awarding of achievement.
That's great.
So, yeah. And, Bruno Sammartino did not get inducted into the Hall of Fame until 2013. So... there was some bad blood.
Yeah.
Bad blood.
I remember seeing a documentary with Bruno quite a while ago. This is probably 15 years ago, this documentary, and he had nothing but hatred for all of the McMahons in that documentary.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there was legal battles,
Yeah.
knowing Vince. I'm sure there were legal battles, but also I remember Bruno talking during the Attitude Era. He didn't like the way the business was going. He didn't like all the steroids and the vulgarity in wrestling. So, he's an old school guy. But he was inducted in 2013 with Mick Foley, Bob Backlund, Trish Stratus, Booker T, and President Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
What a class he has there.
It's quite the class, yeah. And that is all.
Thank you for that, Joseph. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can find us on every major social media and podcast subscription platform by searching up the handle Wrasslin Raw. That's WRASSLINRAW. While you're there, don't forget to click subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know about the fastest growing wrestling podcast in the world. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on May 22nd, 1995, with matches featuring Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Barry Horowitz, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.